Hello everybody, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today is another oil painting. This comes at a request from a patron member talking about moody atmospheric oil paintings. So this is 5x7 Centurion oil primed linen canvas, just painted on some Michael's gessoed hardboard. So just kind of showing the difference between the surfaces, and going to play with a different brush than the previous video, while also exploring this moody atmospheric painting technique. So this brush is a Hobby Lobby. It's the Master's Touch Filbert number 6. I had an unopened one right here. About $11 brush, synthetic hog brush. Get it on sale, 40% off. But the Dick Blick, the Jerry's Artorama type brushes are a lot cheaper if you could get those on sale. This white bristle brush was a lot stiffer though than this one. I'm not going to run my fingers over it. It's still got paint on it. But this one's a lot softer. So you might see a difference in the approach. This is the linen surface, so it's a little bit different. We'll see a different texture with wiping back to the white of it. We'll also see probably a difference in absorbency. So anyway, this is the sap green, the Pompeii red, like the last one, and I'm using Galkid as my medium. So we'll make up an imaginary scene just like the last. I'm going to try to have more texture in the foreground, just like the previous one, and then build up a foggy, atmospheric trees. And you can hopefully see that once we get to those guys, the difference in the application of this brush, or the difference of the surface. Oil primed canvases or linen is more expensive than universal primed. I mainly use universal primed due to the price, but the oil primed is interesting to experiment with, and it's kind of like the direction that I'm just seeing personally if I want to go into it. I mentioned in the previous video artists to look into, modern painters that kind of use this technique. They are Dennis Sheehan and Stuart Davies. Stuart Davies has a plethora of videos on YouTube utilizing these techniques. He'll use sap green and a red ochre. You can use green and a red, a blue and an orange, a purple and a yellow. Experiment with complementary colors for this underpainting. You can use this underpainting as a finished product, especially if you like the atmospheric, moody feel of it. This one will be done in the fashion of not quite finished, so that in a few days when it's dry enough, we'll glaze some colors over it and see how we can get different moods and feels from it. I'm going to leave some areas white to let those kind of really pop when we get to another day. So this one, I was talking about putting in trees and having the fog go amongst them. This brush leaves less of a texture than the one right here, the Pro Sable, the Creative Mark brand. That's probably all you need, is maybe a stiff bristle brush to play around with, and then a soft bristle brush. One for more texture and one to kind of soften things up. One painter, and for the life of me, I cannot remember his name, he, in his videos, would use a rougher brush for portrait for the underpainting, and in the same alla prima style, so he'd be finishing the portrait in one sitting, he would move to a softer bristle brush to lay paint on top of the currently drying pigment, the wet paint that he put down previously. I think I mentioned in the previous video that I'm down in Louisiana, so we don't really have mountains. And if I display stuff locally, people really prefer local scenes. So you can use this approach to represent mountains. You can use this approach to represent trees, whatever you prefer. And just to emphasize fog between layers, I'll leave that white between them, and I'm going to soften into it. The linen and canvas does not wipe back as smoothly as a smooth gesso board, so that might be something that you want to consider when making your purchase. I personally I prefer panels now because of the space that they take up, or a lack of space that they take up. For example, I believe this is 1/8 deep. Well, something that's stretched would be 3/4 at least. Let's try to get a little bit more form to these guys. We didn't put in a sky, so I'll do that. And I'm just putting in just the tones. Now another thing to talk about is I really don't do the oil painting videos from a teaching standpoint because it's more exploratory. A lot of people people are very opinionated about oil paintings and the approach. And if their approach is correct or not, or if they've heard it by this one way, so that's the way they do it. I'd love to hear in the comments below how y'all do it, but of course, be polite and civil. Where was I going with that? Lost my train of thought. Apologize. Yeah. So I'm trying to leave those gaps there between kind of the midground and the background. I'll play around with building those up. And then at a later date, whenever it's dry, we'll glaze over it, experiment. One of the things the Patreon member had mentioned was the lavenders that were used in nocturnes. Nocturnes were nighttime scenes by James Whistler. And James Whistler, we'll kind of ramble about him for a little bit. If you read books on him, he was during the art movement when they were influenced by the prints and the woodblock prints that were coming out of the Asia. I'm really not sure the correct term for referring to that region. You could say Oriental style. In fact, that's kind of what I'm drawing on here. to give these gaps, the Oriental ink paintings. But, you know, Whistler was influenced by those. I also read he was very, if he did a portrait, he wanted to do it all in one go. He wanted it to be all one skin of oil, which apparently was very rough for the sitter, the person being painted. One woman he did it, painted at least 20 something times, just trying to get right in one go. Oh, sorry, I was talking about the lavenders and the nocturnes. So his color schemes were really tied together, and I think that was heavily influenced by the Asian arts and how tied together they were. And this simple process of using two colors are going to be tied together no matter what you do, because of how limited the palette is. I can experiment with kind of mixing lavenders and see what can happen. And that'd be for another day. In watercolor, the lavender in the more affordable line of paints, so I'll just use that term, are usually a mixture of two pigments and might have white in them, so they might be a little bit more opaque. We can explore those there. I just love when somebody messages me with a question or something that has direction to it, or wants me to attempt to paint something. I may not get it right, but it's awesome. It almost feels like, I guess if you were to watch an improv group and somebody said, oh, they're at the dentist or something. And it just, it really helps, because you'll find that as you paint, you may start to fall into the same pattern of things. You know, for example, I'm using the sap green and the Pompeii red. That's a very common pattern for me to use those two colors when starting off an oil painting, or at least a landscape in this style. So I had mentioned in the beginning of the video that you can use different complementary colors. I think we'll explore that down the line. So keep the questions and comments coming, because it helps me grow, and lets me know what y'all are thinking. I'm gonna bring that together there. I'm gonna leave these whites so that they really catch the glazes later on in another day. We'll pull the moon out over here, so we could do a nocturne nighttime scene. Hopefully that's not too big for the moon. You could take a Q-tip. Fun fact, the European artists that I watch will refer to them as cotton buds. So it's hard to wipe back to the pure white on this material, but that'll be good enough. Then we'll see if we can scrape out a textured tree here. You can see I put the leaves in. And you can use a piece of paper towel to pull that out. And hopefully this is also exhibiting the struggle between the one material, the one surface, and the other. This is a little bit harder to get those nice lifts out of. Okay, so we'll come back with more when it dries. I hope you enjoyed. Please let me know any questions, comments down below. And I will talk to you all soon. Have a great day.